do a brief introduction?
Sure.
Aaron Mullins is the reason our club started. When we first started, we saw a bunch of bees. We didn't know what to do with it, and thankfully we have a bee expert who's been working with bees since he's a kid, since he was a child, and did a youth program and got his own set of bees. And we're all, in our journey now, but Aaron's been there, so hopefully he can guide us through the honey and the wax, which is some of the most fun parts for people when dealing with bees.
I sent it to Bill.
I'm going to mute Anchor. Okay. Yeah, I'm Aaron. I'm fascinated. I've always been fascinated with social insects, and like you said, I started keeping bees when I was about 9 years old, and it really took. And it brought me into now what I primarily work with is the termites. Ultimately, I got into termites, and I love termites. Ask Karina; she's been hearing me talk about termites for weeks now. But it did start with bees. I started in 1986, if you can believe that. And it was a 4-H project when I was young that sort of got me going here. I am going to open my talk now, which I have not done. Okay, here we go. But today what I want to talk about is just sort of the fun stuff, harvesting from your hive, and just sort of the products and services that you can do as a beekeeper that, right? Yeah.
I just want to start the recording really quickly.
But yeah, there's a lot more to keeping bees than just honey. Whenever you start with, whenever anybody finds out that you're a beekeeper, there's 2 questions that they immediately ask every single time. The first one is, do you get stung? And the second one is, so do you make honey and stuff? And that's because honey is, of course, the biggest product that you can get in the bees. Where are you?
I messed up, Aaron.
I'm trying to make it so that it's like a slideshow. There it is. Okay, so we're going to come through here, and the very first product I want to talk about is honey. I'm not going to stick with this talk. I'm not going to go into depth on how to harvest it and stuff like that. That's a separate talk. Right now, I basically just want to do an overview of what you can get from your hive. And of course, the first one is honey, and there's extracted honey, which is the most common. And then you've got whipped honey, which is not actually physically whipped. It's a crystallization process. And then finally, comb honey. So we're going to real fast talk about this. We've got a frame with brood, and a frame with, and at the top of the frame is going to be honey. Beekeeping, the basic element of beekeeping is that we are going to trick the bees into thinking that their nest is smaller than it actually is. And the idea is, we do that with modular frame hives. So you'll see we have a hive box, and then you'll see the stack of boxes. Well, when you start out with a beehive, you start with just the bottom box. But then you're going to add boxes, and that's going to confuse them and make them be like, oh, we've got all this extra space that we need to fill, and so they'll fill that extra space. And the interesting thing about sort of the economics of it is that, let's say you have a hive with 30,000 bees. Basic wild nest, this is what you would kind of see there. It actually takes about 20,000 of those bees to do all the work that needs to be done in the hive. That's taking care of the queen, that's cleaning up after brood, that's collecting nectar, making wax and everything like this. Now, if you have a hive with 100,000 bees, it actually only takes about 25,000 bees also. And it's because of economies of scale. It's like that's just how many bees it takes to take care of everything. So when you have 100,000 bees, what are the rest of those bees doing? The rest of those bees are harvesting. And so the whole point of beekeeping is to trick the hive into thinking that they only have 30,000 bees, but they actually have 100,000. So everything over top of this 25,000 is your workforce. And that is great. Now, in a wild nest, you see this. You have a smaller number of bees. But what happens is their priority is to swarm. So they want to reproduce. They want to send out new queens and start new colonies based on their genetics. Well, it takes, if you swarm, you lose all your workforce. And that's why if your hive swarms within a year, then you're not going to get any honey that year. Yeah, you're just not going to get any honey that year. Maybe a little bit, but certainly not enough. So we've tricked these bees into living in our box. When we use our box, we trick the bees into thinking that their colony is not so big, and the bees just set to work and they do what they do. And honeybees collect nectar, they collect pollen, and they collect water, and they collect propolis. Those are the 4 things. And nectar they turn into honey. Pollen they make into bee bread, and they feed it to their young as a protein source. And then water, of course, they need it to kind of thermoregulate the hive. They evaporate water around different droplets here and there. And finally, propolis is sort of the glue of the colony. A lot of people call propolis or propolis the immune system of the beehive too, because it tends to have a sink for diseases and bacteria and all that kind of stuff that kind of get stuck in there. So harvesting honey, like I said, I don't want to go into this, but since honey is of course the biggest thing, we do need to talk about it a little bit. First, you're going to remove super frames from a hive, and then you're going to you're going to do that with a bee escape. Now, there are 2 different designs. This is bee escape. Down here in Florida, I don't recommend using this. I would recommend using the chemical. It's like almond oil extract that you can buy at bee stores, and you just staple an old T-shirt to about a top, a hive top, soak it with that stuff, and put it on top of the hive, and then come back 5 minutes later, and all the bees are no longer in the supers. They have moved down, and they're living down below. And then you can harvest the honey. You take the honey off there. And so the bee escape is also just sort of like a valve that only lets bees go through it in one direction. And the idea is you put it underneath of your honey boxes, and they go downstairs and they can't get back upstairs. So second, we're going to decap comb so honey can be spun out. And I think we have that here. This is a decapping knife. It gets hot, you just cut the tops off. This is a fantastic thing to do in front of kids. I used to always bring, when I did talks like this, I would always bring honey with me and let the kids do some extracting themselves. But finally, we're going to use a radial extractor, and that's what he's cutting those, this is what that is. And the idea is you put frames into it, and then you spin it, and centrifugal force, the honey all gets extracted. And then you take those frames and you return them to your hive. That's something that we're going to talk about in just a little bit, the importance of that. And never give honey to children under 2 years old, but filtered honey is what the main product that you're going to get from your beehive. Raw honeycomb, so you can also do things called like cut comb honey, or even like you can get the bees to actually make, this is a series of cassettes, and you can get the bees to actually make comb honey inside those cassettes, and when you pop them out, it comes out round. That's a really popular way to do it. There's a lot of different ways you can collect comb honey. I consider making comb honey to be one of the most difficult things a beekeeper can do, next to right around the same level as queen rearing. It takes a lot of know-how. I'm notoriously bad at it because I really don't know my flowers. Really, I have a hard time paying attention to when things are in bloom and whatnot. And so a good beekeeper, a conscientious beekeeper, is going to know when the next nectar flow is going to be. So when the next so you have like clover opens all at once. So a good beekeeper is going to know when those things flower and when the bees need to be ready for all of that. And I think that, let's see here. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. And then finally you extract it and you let the honey settle and you pour the honey from the bottom right there. And it takes a little while, but if you bottle it right away, you want it to set in a tank for a while, because if you try to do it right away, you'll have a lot of foam that'll end up in there, and that's not something you want. So that's literally all I did with bees. Now the only thing I really do like about honey is kind of this romantic notion of it. First of all, it's cool. I mean, it's made by an insect, and we're eating it. But the second thing is, honey, if you think about it, every place on earth that has flowering plants has a unique flavor of honey. And so I've always done this where whenever I go to a foreign country, I always try to find a beekeeper and I try to buy honey from the beekeeper, not just sold in the store, because I don't know where that has been. But if you buy it from a beekeeper, then they do it. I have a huge honey collection. Unfortunately, I've already packed it up and moved it to Virginia. But I did find this. This was from Bolivia. It's never been opened. But I'm going to pass this out. There's actually a cloud forest in Bolivia where it's from, so it really is truly unique. This is not an environment that there's a lot of in the world. So I'm going to pass this around, and I'm also going to pass around avocado honey. Avocado honey comes in the middle of the summer here. And the thing about avocado honey is that it's absolutely disgusting. So I'm going to pass this around, and you'll see avocado honey, it's like molasses almost. It's just such a strong, sour flavor. Here's some testings. So pass that around. My favorite, I actually don't really love honey. That's not why I got into it. You know, I got into it for the insects. What I do love to get from them, however, is wax. And I'm going to pass some wax around too. I guess I've got a couple of these things. Wax actually comes out it first comes out white. It turns colors. I love this yellow color. This is generally considered one of the best grades of wax. It's nice and bright yellow like that. And but it turns yellow because of the pollen or because of whatever the bees are collecting. And you can get wax in different colors depending on where your bees are. So this whole idea of honeycomb, this whole idea of hexagonal shaped cells that you rear your brood in is not new to bees. Bees evolved from wasps, and wasps were already doing this. What they do, however, is the one thing is unique about it is that they make it out of wax, and only bees in the family Apidae make wax. Now the family Apidae includes your honeybees. Of course, there's 6 species of honeybee all over the world. We use only one species, the European honeybee, and races from all different places around there. But so your honeybees, your bumblebees, your orchid bees, which we do have here at the center. It's an exotic species, but it's still an orchid bee. And there's a lot of stingless bees in South America that do it too. Here's an example of a stingless bee in South America that you will find. Now, this bee, they're often called fairy bees because they're pretty much silent when they're flying. They really make no sound. It's a foreign thing. You wouldn't think it'd be related to honeybees, but they're social, and they have a little corpicula, which is the little pollen basket in their hind legs that they carry stuff around with. All of the Apidae do that. They all have that little thing in their hind legs, and this one is particularly I love because here's their tube, and you'll see this is poop here. They're using that as kind of like a defense, and they're hanging out here. So this little wax tube. If you cut into this, that's where all their frames are, or not frames, but that's where all their comb is, the nest, and everything that they have. This is coming out of a termite nest that is really common in Central and South America. And this is a common association. This one species of bee just loves putting its nests into this species of termite's nest. And there's some kind of quid pro quo, I'm assuming, that goes on there. I don't know what it would be, though. But that's me. I started to mess with them, and these are little, these are termites right here. So obviously something's happened and they're getting fired up, and the termites came out and they're defending things. This is Nasutotermes for all you termite people. Because Nasutotermes, they make if you go in the Caribbean, you see that big dumb black basketball that's stuck to the side of a tree that's a termite nest. That's Nasutotermes. They do that. Really conspicuous nests. This is a different species, but this is a stingless, another stingless bee that you'll find in South America for the most part. They lost the order to their nest. Like, they don't really have the honeycomb anymore. What they do have is, this is like a wax ball, and within that ball, there's different chambers that are filled with honey. And so, a lot of the stingless bees, just like these guys, they make honey too. Honey is not unique to the honeybee. Honeybees are best at making large quantities of it, though. And so, once again, wax is produced by bees in the family Aphidae. This is a stainless bee's nest. These stainless bees are hilarious. When you go into these places and you find stingless bees, if you go and mess with them, they can't sting. They don't have a stinger at all. They can bite. And what they do is they fly out of their nest and they land on the buds, right? Just to try to scare you. But then if that doesn't work, they'll actually start yanking hair. They'll get in my beard, and they'll like yank on hair, and they're yanking hair in here. And it's hilarious, but it actually works, because it is kind of disconcerting to have like hundreds of bees all pulling your hair all at once. It's not really dangerous, I mean, it doesn't really hurt, but it's like unsettling. And so a lot of those bees are there. That's another nest. Here's where wax actually comes from. It comes from glands, wax-producing glands. There's 3 on each side of the abdomen, underside of the abdomen of a young bee. So bees, they hatch out of their cells. They're an adult. They have wings. They're ready to go. They're going to start making wax. And they only make it for a few weeks before they lose that and then start doing different tasks. But they eat honey and they produce wax, right? Eat the honey. So they hang out at home. They eat the honey. They produce the wax. This is an important thing that we do and that biologists love to do. And I did it with termites. I do it here. When we look at these things, I like to think of it as like an inventory, right? So there's economics of things within a social insect hive and whatnot, and whatever else. But this is sort of to demonstrate that wax is expensive. And what I mean by that is a bee has to eat 7 pounds of honey to make 1 pound of wax. So it's a trade-off. So the bees make the wax. It's very energetic. Wax is a fat. And we know that fat tends to be, it has more calories in a smaller space than carbs do, and that's exactly what this is. So the wax is a fat. The honey is there. So you can either have 1 pound of wax or you can have 7 pounds of honey. You're going to manage your hive to do that. Most of the times, you're going to want to produce the honey, because wax is also a byproduct. Now, this is expensive. Wax, like I said, it's crazy. I've talked to a lot of beekeepers about this, or bee researchers about it, and I just don't understand why bees started doing this. Why do they use wax? It's such an expensive thing to make. They have to produce it. It melts, right? It melts. It does a lot of different problems. But all of the Aphidae do this. So this is in Paraguay. I came along, I found one of these nests. This is like a tube, like I showed, the little tube that comes out. A lot of stingless bee species do that. This is a tube coming out from a log, and here's the bee in flight, and here's this. This lady right here is not part of this nest. This is a different species up here. And not only is she a different species, she's a different species of stingless bees. So we've got multiple species of stingless bees. here at her hind leg, what does she have?
Wax.
She's stealing wax from this other species of bee. She's stealing it. Just showed up, and if you looked at it, that's what she was doing. She was harvesting the wax. They were messing with her. They couldn't sting her or anything like that, you know. So they're doing the best they can to try to defend themselves. But she just came in and she's stealing the wax, and this was right next to it. This is the thief. It was not just one bee. It was a lot of bees that were robbing. It wasn't just one. It was obviously two social bees, and they were ganging up on these ladies. But you see, she's like biting its wings, and so it's not really doing a lot of damage, but it's at least preventing her from flying away, I guess. But that was the brawl. That's like knockdown, drag out, fight over this resource because wax is such a valuable resource. And it just doesn't make much sense to make a nest out of that, but here we are. Uses a beeswax as a cosmetic in cosmetics. It's used in cosmetics, food coatings, pharmaceuticals, candles, salves, lip balms, etc. There's stuff for wax all the time. Now, wax is a byproduct of extracting honey because you cut those cappings off and those go down into the thing, you let it drain, now you have wax. So no matter what, you're going to end up with some wax. Some people do, however, harvest specifically for the wax, in which case they would melt down they would melt it down. But if we go back here and we're talking about how expensive it is again, this is, I lost my train of thought again. Sorry guys, I should have done more of this. Anyway, color of melted wax, it comes out all different colors. What time of the year? Like I said, I like the bright yellow. Everybody kind of does, although wax is white as it comes out. And I do want to talk about critical temperatures, because you're dealing with wax. Don't just melt it on the stove. You're going to ruin the whole batch, because what happens is it scorches. You have to really obey these. I learned this the hard way. You have to obey these temperatures. You don't want it to go past 185, or your wax starts to turn brown. Other things to consider, well, like I said, you're gonna extract some honey. So I remember what I was trying to say before. Now you have a frame of honey, you spin the honey out, and you put the honey back in your hive. Why? We already know how expensive honey is. If you let your bees reuse their wax, their frames, you're getting a lot more honey at the end of the day. You're going to net a lot more honey at the end of the day than if you wasted it. And so you come back here and you have one of these things. I'd never used one until more recently, until just about 10 years ago. But this works really well. It's just a solar heater. What happens, it's just a box, you put it in there, it gets hot. You can paint the box black to get it even hotter, but it never really gets above the temperature where wax starts to scorch. So hard water versus soft water. Propolis. I'm going to be done pretty quick here, guys. Propolis is another really fun one. As you keep bees, you're going to learn that hives have personalities. Every hive, and it's easiest to see in like, I'm a beekeeper, I have 10 hives in this bee yard. That one at the end is, just don't mess with that until you're done, until the end of the day, because it's really aggressive and you don't want to deal with that one. Or you go through, and other hives have different principles. Some hives love propolis. And propolis is just a resin. It's just plant resin that's extracted. It's stolen from or it's taken from trees, so like tree sap and stuff like that. They take the tree sap. Propolis is a big pain for bees to collect because it's so sticky and it's so gummy, and you lose your legs a lot of the time. That's why honeybees only collect propolis at the very end of their lives. So when a bee is born, when it emerges from its cell, the first task is going to be taking care of the queen and taking care of the other brood that's still developing and making wax. As that bee ages, its job changes. And we see this in termites too. As it ages, next it's going to do something else. And then finally, towards the end of its life, that's when it's going to start foraging. It's going to start going out and looking for flowers and coming back and telling everybody else where this flower is and recruiting more to go to those flowers. So I should have practiced this talk, I guess. But yeah, finally, at the very, very last thing that it does is going to collect propolis. It's sticky, it gets stuck to your legs and whatnot. But you'll have a hive that has a ton of propolis, that loves to make propolis, and you can sort of scrape it off and just keep it. Every beekeeper has like a little coffee can somewhere full of propolis. It's just part of it. It's just something you do. This is propolis that I dissolved into. I went to it this morning and realized it had completely evaporated, so I had to add more alcohol to it. But this is propolis. It doesn't smell great, but that's dissolved in alcohol. So propolis dissolved in alcohol. And I'm going to get a little bit more about that in a second. But propolis, so honeybees have this thing called bee space. And if you've seen a beekeeping talk, you've heard about bee space. What bee space is, it's actually just the space of two bees standing next to each other. That's bee space. And if a bee is in a nest and it finds a gap bigger than bee space, the bees are going to fill that in with honeycomb. If you do the same thing and it's smaller than bee space, they're going to fill it with propolis. Bee space is the only thing that they leave alone, and that's why we have another reason why we have frames. We have hives with frames in there because we can dictate where the bee space is going to be, and we can keep the bees making their comb in where we want them to. So here's propolis. These ladies, obviously, this is narrower than bee space, so they're in the process of filling it in with propolis. And then also, you don't have to paint the inside of your hive bodies, because bees are going to cover it with propolis anyway. So that's the main use for it. You also see this here at the top. You know, like I said, some hives hardly make any propolis, but some hives make a ton of it. They put it everywhere. So, famously, propolis is one of the earliest wood preservation tools that we had, right? So lacquer, and it's interesting that both came from insects. We had lacquer 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. We had lacquer, which was taken from a beetle. I think it's a beetle. And then we have propolis, which is taken from bees. And for thousands of years, they've been mixing it with alcohol and using it as a wood varnish. And Stradivarius, famously, everybody says Stradivarius used it, but the truth is everybody used it back then. Thousands of years we've been doing this kind of stuff. Pollen. This is a dirty word to me. I don't, because I'm including it in this talk does not mean that it doesn't mean that I agree with it, right? There's a lot of beekeeping stuff that people are like, oh, well, you know, you eat the local honey, you get the immune like hay fever from that area. That's never been proven. It's an interesting and sound idea, but it's not there. And you know, one of the big, you think about it, when you have flowering plants, they're trying to get pollen from one flower to another flower. A lot of plants employ bees to do that. In fact, flowering plants and bees appear simultaneously in the fossil record. They are they're associated with each other, and bees get everything they need from a flower, except for water and propolis. They get everything they need from flowers. It's kind of a romantic notion. Now, there's a lot of things, when you think about that, bees are going to be to flowers that are trying to attract bees to bring pollen other places. Pollen that is in the air that you're allergic to, that is pollen from wind pollination, right? So the idea is a plant, a lot of palms do this, a lot of, ragweed corn as an example. They're not shooting for bees. They're just trying to broadcast as much of that pollen as they can and hope it lands on another flower. That's what you're allergic to. Bees aren't collecting that. So they actually not the same thing. Like I said, the idea is sound, but it's not true because you're allergic to wind-pollinated plants, pollen, and bees are attracted to to bee-pollinated plants. So there's no connection there. But another thing that people like health food trends, a lot of people think that also pollen is a really good for food for you. And it's a food, I mean, you can definitely digest it. But, so bees collect pollen, they have these little blobs right here, they get it wet with nectar that they've collected, and they make this little sticky ball, and they carry it around their hind legs. Well, you can put a trap on the front of a hive that makes the bees, and the bees have a hard time getting through without knocking the pollen off of their hind legs. So they're going in here, bees are getting knocked off, and they're falling into a tray, into a thing below, and that's how you collect pollen. You can get a lot of pollen this way. And people buy it. People buy it as a health food kind of thing. They put it in a yogurt or whatever. Thing you need to be really careful of, though, it's easy to overdo it. It's easy to take too much pollen from the bees, and you run into big problems there. And so sometimes people will be like these industrial groups that are doing this kind of thing. They're actually stealing all the pollen from the bees and then feeding them artificial pollen on the inside of the hive, which is going to be like based in, I forget what it is that they use for that, but it's not pollen, and they use it like soy-based meal kind of stuff that they use. Anyway, you need to be careful when you do this because you can overdo it. Royal jelly. Again, lots of health claims about royal jelly. The only thing, though, is that royal jelly, well, there's only one difference between royal jelly, first of all. That's the difference between a queen bee and a worker bee. If a queen lays an egg into a cell and that egg hatches and develops and comes out, it's going to be a worker. If you take the same egg and you put it upside down in a downward facing cell and fill it with royal jelly, it becomes a queen. There's nothing magic about royal jelly. It's actually between royal jelly and normal brood food, which is what bees would produce to give to their young. It's really just a difference in types of sugar. It's like one has a higher fructose in it and less sucrose or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it is. There's nothing really magic about it, but you can get a hive. You do this when you're queen rearing too. You can force your bees to make a bunch of these things, and then they have all that, and you can harvest that and take out the royal jelly and sell it to people who think that it's going to be advantageous to do so. Finally, products of the hive. Some beekeepers keep bees just to make more bees for other beekeepers, and this is really an important thing because we have, I have bees, queens, packages, and nukes. When you learn first starters of beekeeping, that's how you start a hive. Unless you're a bee club, in which case you're taking them from, you're cutting them out of other places. So here's something. If you rear queens, this is your product. This is what it's going to look like. You're going to have a queen in here, and she's got a couple of attendants in there, a couple of bees in there. This is some candy underneath the wood here. There's a hole drilled. Candy, and you take this and you put it into you have a queenless hive. You take this, you put it in your queenless hive. The amount of time it takes for her to lick her way through the candy and for the bees to get through the candy on the outside, it's about long enough for her to have equilibrated and for the hive to accept her as a new queen. They don't always go straight for it. So there's your queen. There's your workers. That is, rearing queens is your product. Now, you can just rear queens, but you can also rear queens for packages of bees. And this is another way to start a beehive. And that's basically, this is just a screening box. And there's a queen cage in there, like I just showed you. And there's some syrup, some sucrose syrup in there. And you can ship this to people, and then they take it and they dump the ball into a hive, put the queen in there in a cage, so she doesn't leave, because she might leave if she's so stressed out. But you put her in there, they set up shop, and then the queen gets released, and then everybody's good, and you have a new colony. Now, if you start a hive this way, you're not going to have honey your first year. If you really want honey your first year, what you're going to want to buy is a nuke, which is just short for nucleus colony. 5 frames of brood and honey, hopefully mostly brood, and hopefully a lot of adult bees, and that's how you're going to get started. That gives them enough of a head start that they can actually produce some honey, hopefully, in your first year, certainly in your second. And then, but basically this is a product that is on the market, and you can order these from other states. Usually you're going to join your beekeeping association, and they're going to have a couple of people that do this as their main thing. Now, these are beekeepers who are not harvesting a lot of honey, if any, because they're harvesting their bees and getting rid of that workforce before the honey starts coming in. So these are pretty expensive usually. When I was a kid, I remember them being like $20 or $30, but now it's like $150 to $200 for a local nucleus colony. And you don't usually get to keep the box. Usually you go there with your own box and you take the frames out and you put it in your own box and leave the box with the beekeeper. So very expensive, but you can make good money doing that. And then finally, there's some more of this kind of stuff. Acupuncture and apitherapy is a thing. It was trending for a while. You don't see so much about it anymore. But the idea is you're actually using like some of the acupuncture pressure points and stinging yourself in those places and hoping that works better for whatever it is that ails you. So that's another, beekeepers do this and make money doing this to people. And you have to have access to a hive to do this, because the bees need to be alive when they're stinging you. I left the biggest to last. It's still hard for me to wrap my head around it. Pollination services, the idea of renting your beehives to farmers who need them for pollination, is actually the biggest moneymaker for commercial beekeepers. It's the biggest. They make their most money doing this. And almond groves, as a civilization, we have started growing our food in these giant monocultures. And if you fly over California, you've got these almond groves that are absolutely enormous. And there's no other plants there. It's just these avocado trees. Well, these almond trees. So you fly over this thing, and it's just endless fields of trees, and there's hardly any other bees there, no other plants there. So that environment cannot support a population of bees. So they have to bust them in. And that's what happens. Beekeepers have a lot of hives. They do that. They bring it to, they drop them in the almond groves, and then they pick them up when it's done, and they take them somewhere else. And usually the next place they drop it off is going to be somewhere with a lot of nectar and honey, so they can make that. Bees are fuzzy. Like I said, bees showed up in the fossil record the same time as their flowering plants, and that's because they're there to collect honey. The way you know it's a bee and not a wasp is all this fuzz. Now, you can have some fuzz on wasps too, but nothing like this. And if you look at these up close, under a microscope, you'll see that those hairs are branched. It's like a feather. And wasps don't have that. So the bees are fuzzy. You're probably guessing it right. The reason they're fuzzy is because they're collecting pollen. And the idea is they want to get all the pollen all over them and do it. A lot of them have, depending on the type of pollen they collect, they have these, I like to call bees the Swiss Army knives of nature. And that's because bees, if you look at a bee up close under a microscope, you see all this stuff. There's always like a spine here, or like here, this is like a spine. Like, what's that for? I don't know. But they have all this different stuff. They've got these spines, they've got brushes, and they've got combs, and they've got little, spikes and all that kind of thing. They're trying to get covered in pollen so they can rake it off of themselves and concentrate it into a little ball that they'll carry around in their legs, or other types of bees carry it in different ways. But that's what bees are. They're fuzzy, and they're good for pollinating. Here's an example of an almond crop. Now you see, look at all those flowers. Man, that's tons and tons of nectar to collect, but there's no other flowers here. As soon as these flowers close, it's a desert, a complete desert when it comes to bees. That's why native bees can't survive in here, because for most of the year it's a complete food desert for them. But every now and then they have this giant bloom, and of course they can't support the population to actually pollinate them, so they have to bust them in. This is not a new practice. A lot of people are horrified by this notion, the idea of bees and being on a bus that you would, or on a truck that you bring around with you. This is not a new practice. This has been done for thousands of years. There are bee hieroglyphs that talk about busing beehives up and down the Nile River for pollination services for different crops. So this is not new, guys. Of course, in the modern sense, what they do is it's a semi-truck and a commercial beekeeper who has multiple semi-trucks. They're starting in Mexico. They're coming up to pollinate the almonds. They're going further to northern California, over into Idaho and maybe Utah to collect nectar. Clover honey mostly comes from that leg of these commercial beekeepers. And they come all the way back around, and finally in the bottom, they come back down the East Coast and into Mississippi for Tupelo season. And Tupelo is the most expensive honey that we have here in the United States. So, not new. We've been doing this for a very long time. And that was actually all that I had. I was going to talk about, the one last thing is that I didn't even include in the talk the type of beekeeping that I do and have done for a long time is actually beekeeping for science, right? So what I want with science if I want to do a scientific experiment on bees, I want replicates. So I want as many hives as I can find that are the same size, right? So I'm trying to ensure that these hives, and I'll steal from, I'll play Robin Hood. I'll steal some from one hive and put it in another hive. And I'm not trying to build a population up to, 100,000 bees to collect all that honey. I'm trying to just keep them steady so that I can do an experiment. I can have a control group of 4 hives, and I can have a test group of 4 hives, and I can compare data between the 2 of those. I am leaving. I'm leaving in 2 weeks, and I'm moving to Virginia. I used to be the beekeeping technician at Virginia Tech. I'm going back to Virginia Tech to do termite stuff again. And I'm actually starting a business. You guys don't get a PhD in termites. Do we have any? Yeah, don't get a PhD in termites. There's no jobs out there for that. I've been looking for a job for like 3.5 years since I graduated, and they're just not out there. So what I'm doing is I'm branching out, and I'm going to start keeping bees and maintaining termite colonies, and I'm just going to sort of do that and establish. And I already have established Worker Cast Labs. That's going to be my company, and I'm going to run an independent lab for termites, bees, maybe cockroaches, some ants, throw those in there, whatnot. I have to leave here to do it because I can't compete. I don't want to compete with my lab here that is doing it with local species. So I'm moving to Virginia where we have a different species, and that's what I'm going to stay there. But that's all I had. Thanks for being patient. and everybody get to try this stuff.
I like both of them.
Yeah. My mom loved the avocado. It's covered gallons and gallons of it.
It's good.
Yeah, I don't like it, but I will try this because I haven't.
Yeah, I love it better.
Was it kind of sour?
Hmm?
It's kind of like smoky.
It's like sour, right? It's like sour smell.
Aaron, do you mind if I ask you a question about a slide?
Absolutely.
Okay, let me click on it. It was about queens, because we've been seeing a good amount of queens, and I've been reading about superseding versus them leaving and swarming. So if you see them, like a bunch of them on the bottom of a frame, that's good, right?
Yeah, that's good.
If you see them on the bottom of a frame, is that the indication that they're superseding?
That's not a superseder cell. That's a swarm cell.
We saw some, I think they were mostly on the bottom. Like this.
These are superseder cells, and even more, if you see it coming out of like flat. This is just some burr comb that they put in there, and they put these cells up there. If it's on the bottom of the comb or on the bottom in the on a frame, that's indicative of a healthy hive that is getting ready to swarm, because they're getting crowded enough in there that that's what they want to do. Superseder cells is when they are. It's like a mutiny.
Queen's old or something.
Yeah, it's a mutiny. The queen's not laying well enough. Guys, we've got to take care of this, and then they will raise a superseder cell, because the queen is looking for those things. Like the queen's looking, and she finds, if you have them down here, that's above board. That queen is saying, okay, let's do this, let's reproduce. But if they're having to sneak and hide it from her, that's because she's not doing a good enough job, and they want to oust her. And so the next queen will emerge. If she doesn't catch it, the new queen will emerge, and she will kill the old queen, or not. But only one queen is coming out of it. And so that's what they do. But yeah, superseder in the comb, above board, on the bottom of the frame.
Thank you. And I'm sure other people have questions, because most of the time in our meetings we'll come up with a question, and then all it is a discussion. We don't really have a good answer. But for example, just that, like I can start to think why they're doing it, so I can come up with my own way of remembering it. Or learning.
In the age of AI, expertise is no longer anything. And I learned that the hard way. 2 years ago, I could show. I could ask AI to draw me a picture of an insect, and it was always just laughable with like legs for antennae. It was like it never could get the right number of legs down. 2 years later, it's almost hard to tell if it's a real or not. So AI is only getting bigger, and you can ask it anything, And so that's another reason why people aren't really hiring a lot of scientists right now, because you can get the information without having to say
Scary
something.
thought.
Yeah, it's the truth. As somebody who's been in the job market for 4.5 years, that's part of it.
So I'll have a question.
Uh-huh.
I guess it's in terms of bee science, how a number of recent studies have come out showing that bee venom can eliminate breast cancer. Are you seeing a lot of movement in that area?
I have that kind of thing comes up a lot.
Well, because I know that they use, like, when you had the slide about acupuncture and stuff like that, I know they use bee venom to treat lupus, not lupus, Lyme disease.
I heard that a lot.
But now that there are a number of recent studies that come out that show that bee venom has eradicated, in those studies, eradicated breast cancer, I would imagine that there's a lot of.
I'm really suspect of that. lots of times, I mean, just look up the kind of pseudoscientific stuff that cures cancer, you know? It's endless. And so somebody will have a study that shows that kind of thing, but it's completely not replicatable because it's used to turn up funding or turn up this or turn up that. But I think it's really, and that's why that question really affected me, because it's like, it's not a responsible thing to even do.
What do you mean?
Tell somebody that like these crystals cure cancer, right? Because we're talking about a very real disease with a very real, and a lot of people would forego traditional treatment in favor of these bees. And as somebody who's kept bees for 40 years, it's always, I've heard everything. I've heard that bees cure everything. And I'm not a doctor, but you would think that if it did cure everything, it would have more legs. You know what I'm saying? Like, it would be something like, oh my God, huge step forward in breast cancer treatment. It turns out it's bees. It just kind of makes me bristle a little bit. The scientist in me has it. And I have friends who died from cancer that went to Mexico to do this treatment, spend tons and tons of money and to do these fake treatments that are illegal to do in the United States because they do not work. And that's what happens. And lots of times people will forego a traditional treatment, and then people will swear up and down. The most recent one I had, somebody on Facebook was saying ivermectin cured what kind of
COVID?
No, it was cancer. It was a kind of cancer that
I've heard that too.
And it doesn't. It's just because it's a buzzword right now, and you can get attention for it. And people are going to forego, And of course, somebody does have cancer, and they did take ivermectin, and it went into remission. Well, usually they've also done traditional Western medicine in addition to it. And so now, how do they know which cured the cancer and which was the placebo? And so I would happily read the paper if you sent it to me, but I'm like, I always just my head every time somebody says cure cancer, I'm not gonna bees or no bees, I'm gonna be skeptical. So, but like I say, yeah, Lyme disease. What was it? Well, here's another thing. I'm sorry, I think I can explain something a little better. My mother believed that she had chronic Lyme disease. Her symptoms were absolutely there, but I don't know that the diagnosis was there. Because, insurance companies don't treat it because it's not really very widely accepted as a real thing. My mother had symptoms, absolutely. I think that her diagnosis was wrong. So she went and she ended up having she was taking this stuff to cure her Lyme disease, and it was so she was taking the stuff to cure her Lyme disease. She ended up having a minor thing like digestive problems. They got a gallstone out or something like that. So she got the gallstone out. She stopped taking it because she heard that it was really, hard on the body. This medicine that she was taking, a nutritional supplement. I'm sorry, not a medicine, a nutritional supplement that she was taking. And so she also ended up having some clotting issues. So the doctor put her on Plavix, which is a blood thinner. And she started to feel better. She got all better, and she decided to start taking this Lyme disease stuff again, and she died the next day from a massive brain hemorrhage. I went and looked this stuff up that does not claim to cure Lyme disease. They count on, on people believing that it will. They count on people saying that it does. But I looked up the ingredients of the stuff, and there's 4 chemicals in there, 3 of which were blood thinners. And not only were they blood thinners, but they were blood thinners with a caveat saying, do not take this if you're on blood thinners. And that's 3 of the ingredients in that thing. And the 4th was something else. But, you know, it's like, that's why like curing cancer and stuff like that's why I get really riled up, because I'm like, you know, the woo industry killed my mother, basically. That's how I look at it. These nutritional supplement people, you know, they have medicine. They're giving people medicine. A lot of people think, oh, what's the worst can happen? It doesn't work. No, it's like, no, that's not the worst thing that can happen. The worst thing that can happen is you can die the next day because you're taking medicine that your doctor doesn't know about, you know? And your doctor, if she was saying, I'm taking this, her doctor would have told her not to do it, you know? So that's where we ended up with that. Sorry guys. But there's also just a lot of woo, a lot of so much pseudoscience when it comes to that. And I get it, you know, bees are so romantic, they're wonderful, they're great, they get everything they need from flowers, you know, it's like, I'm behind on all that stuff. But as soon as you start saying crystals cure, like, you know, cure cancer, that's when I'm out. I'm not gonna, I'll wait, I'll read it, you know. I'm not gonna, you know, I'm not gonna say out of hand that it's incorrect, but I'm just gonna, remarkable claims require remarkable evidence. And a lot of these cases, there's no evidence at all. You know. Anyway, so that's my soapbox I can get down off of now.
Well, thank you for
Any other bee questions?
It's so hard for anyone to understand, like, how serious it is to just believe in something that could hurt someone. So thank you for sharing that, because I mean, at least for me, I've heard multiple people tell me, oh, you know, there's a lot of proof that it helps with Lyme's disease, and I might be a person to go and share that and potentially hurt someone in the future. So
Back it up, you know, trace it. If, you know, that 1% of climate scientists believe that global warming isn't happening, you know. 99% of them think that it is. And so who are you going to go with, you know? That's what I'm saying. But like, if remarkable evidence comes up, 100% I'm there. I also have type 1 diabetes, and there has been a cure for type 1 diabetes down the road my whole life. Because there's always like we have all this stuff with like great evidence. 4 years we're gonna have this developed, and out there you never see it. It never happens because it was not real. But it got a lot of press because it's a remarkable claim. Yeah. So that's what that is. But yeah, bees. You know, keeping bees my whole life. I've been just sort of shocked at the kind of things that people believe about bees that is not true. So. But this time I really am. I closed the presentation.
any last questions?
Yeah, any questions about bees? I promise I won't make it so personal.
I had one question about wax. I just thought it was fascinating that you said it was like fat, and it's like,
Yes.
it's like it's just interesting to think about, because you would think it's just like a material or something, but no, this is something they digest, and it could be digested, right? So it's important to keep it in good condition, so other animals can digest wax.
Usually, there's not too many animals that eat wax. There's a few insects that do it, but it's not something that, like, if you or I were to swallow a bunch of wax, I don't think it would.
Was it just
digest it. Huh?
You store that fat? You like eat it? You store that fat?
We don't process wax.
Yeah,
We
it's
don't.
the thing. You have saturated and you have unsaturated fats.
So then why do people sell it in like a slurry, like you said, the whipped?
They sell wax that way?
Don't they sell honey with wax in it when they whip it or something?
Yeah, but the idea is you would eat it and then you just spit out the wax. That's how the rest of the world eats it. You know, if you're not extracting the honey, then you're just selling it as comb, and you can chew on the comb and spit the wax out. But if you or I, if we were to swallow the wax, we wouldn't digest it, because it's all the way saturated to the point that it's not even digestible by humans.
So how well can it just sit? Because we have a lot of wax that wasn't super well preserved, but they're still in jars.
Well, no, you're gonna wanna freeze it first, because what's gonna happen is wax moths are gonna get in there, and they're probably already in there. Wax moths, one of the organisms that definitely eats wax. And so, you're gonna wanna put it in the freezer, and then either leave it in the freezer or take it out and wrap it in something so that the moths can't get in. But yeah, just hold on to the wax. It's called bird comb, we call it. Everybody has a little pile of propolis and a little pile of bird comb. And you know, when we get around to processing wax, we'll just toss that in and do it.
So there's no harm really in tossing it in?
Absolutely not, no. Wax can be good though, for the colony. We actually do suggest rotating your wax out after like 4 years or so, because you're saving a lot of money and you're making a lot more honey by recycling all your wax. It takes bees a lot, it costs them a lot to make. But the reason we like to rotate it out is because we do, one thing that wax does is it's kind of like, I've already said propolis was sort of the immune system of the hive, but wax is too. Wax has a tendency to absorb a lot of things, and once you're like disease agents or your pesticides or your things like that that's mixed in, once it's mixed in with the wax, it can't get out. And so it's sort of like a liver of the colony if you think about it, you know. So rotate it out because it can, you know, you can overdo it, and then you end up with a lot of pesticides in your hive that are potentially causing stress, you know. So, but yeah, wax is my favorite. I love wax. I love beeswax.
Yeah. Any other questions, anyone? Well, thank you, Aaron.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. I'll be back.
Yeah, and we'll be bothering you in the group chat if you.
That's fine. I've not always been great about answering, about being in group chat, especially now with moving away. And it's just like, my phone has been vibrating like 12 times while I was standing up. Because just like so much stuff going on.
So 2 weeks, official move?
Official in 2 weeks. Today was my official last day. But I'm gonna be, I haven't even packed up my desk yet. I'm gonna have to come back and do it next week, I guess.
It smells pretty good. Yeah. Smells better than.
Propolis, sometimes you get propolis that smells really good, and sometimes you get propolis that does not.
So you just use it for stain, like.
Yeah, for like treating wood, but yeah, like instead of polyurethane or something like that, for that. I'm a bit of a carpenter.
I don't know if I'm still gonna be a carpenter anymore.
Do what?
I don't know if I'm gonna work with wood that much anymore.
No.
I might ask someone else to do it.
Yeah, not really.
Or-
It's just such an important part of my, you know, life. Like wood, both termite work and beekeeping involves a lot of carpentry.
You taught me how to use that saw. Remember, I used to come to you to cut from wood to feed the termites when I first started.
Yeah, no, we're not talking about that saw. We're talking about the other one.
So the wood saw them.
You probably
I know, it's so
loud.
loud. You can hear it from your side.
Yeah.
It's next to the garage. There's a wood shop in there that's like our wood shop is just ours, but there's a central wood shop that is for everybody.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And yeah, and so we have a giant table saw, and that's what we shop on.
Oh, okay.
But you guys are here.
I took it out and from me up there.
They went crazy.
Yeah.
Is that like yesterday? Yeah.
Oh, they just decided.
Well, that was a good last talk.
No,
I know you finished. I know you finished your here. Yeah. It's been like 15 years, huh?
I have been here 15 years. I should have left.
I forgot to ask you. Did you also do like the classes because you were Dr. Sim's employee? Like, did you get the doctorate? Like the free tuition? Oh, okay.
If you're seeing this, you have it. You can do it.
So did you pay for that with just for a master's or your PhD?
I didn't ever pay any money ever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I thought so about the PhD. I mean, I thought Dr. Stewart, and you already live here, so it's like.
No, that's the thing is, if you were gonna get a PhD from our lab, from under the tube that took Manny out, then he would pay for it. I doubt he would pay for it.
But he didn't pay for it for you because you. Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, he paid for it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not considering that at all. I'm trying to go in a different direction. But I am going to do the tuition now since I am here. Yeah.
Take his classes.
I guess.
Yeah, my name is Kenya. So, is there any kind of like apps that you can recommend how to like process?
Any kind of wax.
Like how about just like more or purify?
Yeah, I heard them. When he was talking about it, like, oh my god.
Yeah, I have my
But I'm here to
because I think some people that has watched. So I'm wondering if it's like
Oh yeah, no, it's fine.
okay, but what about the
The what?
it's flat. Like I know it's like purifying everything, but I don't know if that will work. And then
Yeah, I don't know. I don't. I do know that once, like I was saying, once bacteria, bad bacteria, or pesticides, once it gets incorporated into the and I think even if you melted it and cooled it and did all that too, I bet it's still
probably like that will happen with the moon too.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it. And I have another question. No, sorry, I'm kind of shy to like asking for everybody. So I was thinking about setting up like, because I'm having my own bees. I don't like collecting honey because I'm not a fan of honey either.
Yeah.
But I was thinking of actually altering this. It's a thermostat, and I was thinking about like installing one inside of the beehives just to check what temperature humidity is at. So
Yeah, I've done a lot of that. Yeah, it's, what you'll find doing that is that you do a really good job of maintaining a steady. That's what they can cool the hive off, they'll get water and they'll put droplets on the bottom of the hive and fan it with their wings, so you can call it evaporative cooling, and that'll bring the temperature down. And as it starts to get too hot, even for that, they'll do what's called bearding, which is half their bees will just leave and hang out outside of the hive. Yeah, really hot days especially. And that's just doing like, the reason they do that is because bees are creating, body heat of their own. And so by just getting them out of the hive, by nighttime,
So, question about this. So, I was thinking about like doing it outside of the this is not watching for anything. Like, I was thinking about how to avoid purplish because this is going to be the thing measuring their like temperature. So, do you have any like idea on how I can avoid this part right here or build around it or anything like that? That's where
just, so you want to leave this?
this is going to be outside, yeah. I want it
It is
outside.
gonna be outside. Okay.
Yeah, I want it to go outside.
You
And
don't
this
want
one,
to do anything to it. So I've always done it, just have to have it, so it's like, I used to teach it with, when bees are overwintering, they don't, interesting thing about honeybees that most bees don't do, is that they don't have a solitary phase, meaning the queen and the king, in the case of termites, the queen, ants, bumblebees, certain other kinds of bees, the queen will leave the nest, hibernate for the winter time, and then start making her own nest. Honeybees don't have that. Honeybees is in for it, never by herself. So she's always up there. And one of the results of that is that they overwinter as a hive. Instead of hibernation, they actually just all sit in there and they eat their honey. And that's what they make honey for. So what they do is in the wintertime, I would take something like this, I put it in there, and I put one outside So when
So you'll have like two.
drop it down right into the middle of the cluster of bees, just right so it's hanging between the two, and then just close it down. And then I can read the temperature inside there and the temperature outside there. And what you'll see is that this cluster of
What
bees,
people use instead
like,
of pollinating.
when it's really cold, they cluster down tight, and when it's not so cold, they cover up like this. But they maintain the temperature inside that ball at exactly 90 degrees. So they have a lot of ways of regulating temperature, and that's what you're going to see. But yeah, I would just look. I would literally just like set this part under the lid like that, and then just be sure to grate.
You're a first scientist in the bee club?
Not if you count me, that's how.
I was gonna say,
Then
like.
you probe down in the middle, and then have this line. And just
Maybe try now. Let me see. 'Cause I wanna try, I only have one right now, but unfortunately, it's pretty much.
Alright, hi Kevin. Thanks for coming, guys.
That I currently raising with my friend, I checked on it on Monday and I guess they killed off the queen and I found like 4 queens there. So, it is a very small colony, maybe like
Nice to meet you.
we did something
Sure.
before, like, we
It's
had
far,
to,
but-
because there was the one that we had in the box and it was like
Yeah.
literally on the wall.
Roger.
The ones on the wall
You'll
were
come
actually
visit our
like really
area
aggressive
one
and
day,
they were
right?
like, I don't know if they were competing with this one, but this
We
one
will.
were not producing enough honey or
Yeah.
anything.
Join.
And they gave them like a lot of like sugar
There's a
water,
homestead
we're doing
that
like
said
one
it's
ration for sugar water to help them with like some of
Yeah.
the
It works in cold water.
honey.
That how
And
we,
wax, but nothing happened and they ended up
I know that how we
the queen.
work,
So-
right, the word.
We got some. How do you put?
Yeah, so
But
that's-
in general, if you keep two hives next to each other, in general, they're fine.
Yeah, so that's what happened there.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're gonna see that kind of.
Yeah.
Lots of people.
Yeah, that's normal.
Now, what does happen is,
I don't wanna do
in
anything
the
to anger
case
him.
of a dearth
Just talk
of
about it. You guys have to do it.
Oh yeah, that's
nectar,
good.
so if you're just like into the summer, it happens sometimes, there just are no flowers that are
I
open. Then you
I
can't
mean,
start
I don't
seeing
know.
that.
I don't know.
These
So
ones
Dr.
stealing
Seuss,
honey from each other,
every says
and that's
me
bad.
really fast.
Okay,
But you can see that, like if you're out there, you
Yeah,
can
I'm
go
just saying
some
this out, but
yeah,
yeah.
they're
Yeah,
they're
that was
flying
cool.
over the
Nice.
Really? Oh.
Definitely.
No,
But-
I wonder if
That's
that's what happened to our
awesome.
stone, because the other ones were
This is
like
like
bigger colony as well, but at the
Oh.
same time, it was like as soon as they get near this one, they will start going over like crazy on the other side.
It's always the lead.
I haven't met him in person yet, like when I was.
Okay, so I only have one box sitting out there, but
And I would be doing my stuff, but I've never.
So part of the UF.
Cool, yeah.
UFB club, I'm trying to see if I can convince them to do this, I have a few of them, like 6 of them.
That's great.
Thank you so much.
Because here in Florida, we don't have, they don't overlook that cluster because they're such a number. So, I've never done it seasonally, just watch the.
How's your help?
Recovery. You
Yeah.
see, Aaron had an injury that's similar to mine.
Well,
He recovered.
he wanted us to use the table saw, and then I saw that you got injured, and I was like, yeah, the other Aaron just got injured using the table saw.
Take some good training.
Yeah, unfortunately, termites eat wood, and you have to cut the wood.
Not.
It's not.
Yeah, I was surprised that they took a week to do your surgery. I'm like,
I got stitched up. It took a week for my doctor to book this surgery. He said I had 3 weeks to do it after the incident. Yeah, but I was like, please, can I do it tomorrow? No. So I have to wait a while to get it patched up. But where was I going?
yeah, Tyler said it's more like a cut like right here, but not any like finger.
Yeah, it's like. But what's happening is I'm cutting a sheet of wood on the table saw, and I'm using a push stick, with the hand that's close to the blade, right?
Yeah.
Which you're supposed to do. But I think since I had cut so many lines, it was like my 40th line, and I was tired. I think I was holding the wood a little bit while I was pushing the wood. I think, I don't know.
It happens so fast.
But as
It's like literally.
you're pushing, it goes all the way through like every other board, and then at one point it just kicked, and this hand went like that, and then it came back. And it's like,
Yeah.
push stick.
Yeah.
Double push stick.
Well, what I was doing is, when I was then I was in there by myself, and I was pushing the wood through, and I would stand up straight. You don't want to put your weight behind it, because then you can, if you hit a soft spot in the wood or whatever, it can jerk you forward. So I was pushing it through, and then I walked to the other side of the saw, and I was pulling it the rest of the way.
With your fingers.
With my fingers.
Oh my goodness.
But I was like, pretty far enough away, and obviously I shouldn't have done it. Hurt, but I was pulling it, and it hit something hard, either a staple or a knot or something like that. I never saw it, but so I was pulling it back. I was pulling the wood through the saw. It kicked and it sent the wood that way, and I didn't let go in time, and so my hand went back too and just kissed the top of the blade. I was so let go. So
You do one.
So was it plywood or a 2x4?
beautiful. Yeah. No, plywood is not a big deal.
Love the story is taken. This is one of the things that upsets me the most about society. This is a pollinator. Bee your own pollinator. So instead of an animal that's happy to do it, we love to see doing it, just buy a machine and do it yourself. Or eventually a robot.
Yeah, there's
Dude, these French crackers are crazy.
You like them?
Yeah.
Or is it something?
Well, obviously, I'm not going to clean up my desk, so I'll have to come back and do it next week. Definitely give me a call, anything. Oh, that's the other thing about that. I forgot that I'm not going to be here tomorrow at 10. The rest of us will do it tomorrow.
It's still following you, Aaron.
I have to meet somebody in my house at 10 to. I'm actually not.
That's so crazy.
What, the camera?
The camera's still following.
Oh, I didn't even know when we got that installed.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I'll.
That's so interesting.